Buenos dias, bienvenidos, welcome to everybody. In this thought-provoking intercultural event, we will explore the various ways in which Spanish and English coexist in the United States. We will unspool some questions of language maintenance, national and cultural identity, the role of US Spanish language media, as well as issues of language policy. We will conclude our event with our featured guest speaker, Moises Linares, bilingual sports anchor for NBC4 Telemundo 44, who will relate his inspiring story about his personal and professional journey. And so as part of a collaboration between World Languages and Philosophy, the Paul Peck Humanities Institute, and Study Abroad in International Education, you're invited to participate in these two intercultural events, one today and one tomorrow, and interdisciplinary learning opportunities. With the intercultural learning series, we endeavor to engage the MC community in deep intercultural learning sessions. My name is Professor Eddie Arana. Welcome to our inaugural intercultural learning series. I teach German and Spanish at Montgomery College. I also coordinate the honors internship program for the Paul Peck Humanities Institute. I welcome Professor Emily Rosado to take the next step. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Professor Emily Rosado. I teach in the English department, and I also teach journalism courses. We're really excited to be here. I also do work supporting study abroad initiatives with Dr. Malveaux. So welcome, and thank you so much, Moises. We're so excited to hear from you.
Also want to thank you all for joining us. This is so important what Eddie is doing here. And I know that in this time we live in, and again, I'm the study abroad coordinator and also international education. But in this time that we're living, in terms of circumstances, it's so important with our students to have that respect for multicultural language skills. And as we have them represent the US as our best ambassadors, programs like this show just how important that is. So thank you for everyone who's participating in this today.
Great, and I also thank you very much, Dr. Malveaux. And then Carolina Galeano, if you could do a quick introduction, thank you very much.
Sure thing. My name is Carolina Galeano. I'm a graduate of Montgomery College, and I am now a producer director at MCTV. A lot of the Spanish language content that you see come out of the college it originate or is done by me. So it is a pleasure to be here and just continue the conversation on this really interesting topic. Thank you, Eddie.
Great, thank you very much. And yes, I wanted to give a shout out to Michael Simone, athletic coordinator in the Sports Information Division at Montgomery College from the athletic department. He sends the following message to the community at the college, that he would be very interested in any students that attend the meeting and who are interested in covering sports teams for the college this spring or beyond. Primarily, he's looking for writers or contributors, and he would love to chat with them if covering sports is their passion or something that they want to explore. He's also saying that he would feature their stories on the MC website, mcraptors.com, which would help broadcast their work and get them some exposure. And his passion is sports, and he's always looking and willing to help students who want to learn about the sports world, and he is willing to guide them through this ever-changing landscape. And so he wanted me to send that message out to any students who either were here today or heard and saw the recording. Thank you very much. Great, so welcome to our talk today. We're going to start off with a quick contextual talk, about 15-20 minutes, about linguistic contact zones, the ways in which the Spanish language and the English language coexist in the United States, in particular in our community here in MC and also in the region. And as I said, this is our inaugural event for the Intercultural Learning Series. Great, so a quick overview of what we'll cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Spanish language in the United States from a historical standpoint. We will also answer the question to some degree how Spanish and English coexist in the US. We will address some issues of language maintenance. We will talk a little bit about, or perhaps stimulate thought about, national and cultural identity as related to language and bilingualism, particularly as it relates to the role of Spanish speakers in the US as parts of the nation. And we will talk about the US Spanish language in social media and in the media more broadly, in the Spanish media. And then we will finish off with our featured guest speaker, Moises Linares, bilingual sports anchor of NBC4 Telemundo 44, and we will have some time at the end for some Q&A. Great. So a little bit about some important information of the historical overview of Spanish in the United States. Spanish was first and foremost, like English, introduced as a colonial language in certain regions of modern day US. Juan Ponce de Leon arrived in Florida in 1513, and San Agustin, Florida, founded in 1565, is the oldest continually occupied city in present day US, well before Jamestown and Plymouth colonies in the 17th century. Juan Ponce de Leon became the first governor of Puerto Rico for the Spanish crown, and his power and influence was such that a city on the southernmost coast of Puerto Rico was named after him. We can see that in the top right corner. Ponce is a very important city in Puerto Rico, and his namesake is everywhere on the island. In the bottom right, you can see an aerial picture of El Castillo de San Marcos, built between 1672 and 1695, demonstrating the sheer influence of the Spanish Empire on the Florida Peninsula. This medieval style fort was similar to many others across the Caribbean and Central America. Perhaps if you've traveled to other parts of the Caribbean or the Spanish-speaking Caribbean or Central America, you will see similar medieval forts. The picture here is at the very bottom right. Great. Another early settlement founded by the Spanish colonial apparatus is Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico. In this painting by Leon Trousset titled Old Mesilla Plaza near Las Cruces, New Mexico, we see the depiction of the influence of the Catholic Church in the center of the town. By the time of the Mexican Cession in the late 1840s, northern New Mexico had sustained permanent settlements of Spanish speakers for well over 2.5 centuries. In fact, in the 1850s, when senators and congressmen from Washington, D.C. traveled to New Mexico and to Santa Fe specifically, they often required interpreters and translators that accompanied them to be able to engage with local authorities. New Mexico had a highly developed civil society and professionals, doctors, lawyers, intellectuals, journalists, tradespeople, judges, and so on, that operated within their respective institutions completely in Spanish. This is thanks to the Smithsonian. And we see that New Mexico was founded as a permanent settlement between 1607 and 1610. So certainly well before even the United States was a nation or a cultural nation or a nation state. Just a little bit about this painting further, we'll see that King Philip II mandated the appearance of his colonial cities where priests, tradesmen, and the king's army competed for influence. Priests often intervened between the soldiers and native peoples, and the church at left reflects their spiritual authority. Across the plaza lies a low-roofed building that most likely housed military commanders. A dirt road leading into the distance marks the town's position on El Camino Real, the King's Highway connecting trade centers from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and into Mexico and the Western United States. Trousset painted this village after the territory had been ceded to the United States, but he included Mexico's tricolored flags flying in the garrison courtyard and to carry the two cultures and to reflect Spain and Mexico as part of that history. Another example of early Spanish settlement is the modern day city of San Francisco, originally founded as El Presidio de San Francisco on June the 29th, 1776, just a few days before the documented day of independence of the 13 British colonies, soon to be known as the United States of America. This is courtesy of the Library of Congress, and this image depicts the Yamalu tribe, which had been inhabiting the region since approximately 3000 BC. So we know that, again, Spanish was introduced into the California region also as a colonial language, not unlike English. A little bit about language maintenance and education in our country and in our region is really important to note. The Spanish language has survived in the United States even after a change of borders and forced transfer of territory and peoples. In our present day society, there are organizations such as the Joint National Committee for Languages / National Council for Languages and International Studies. This organization's goals are made up of a mission-driven membership of over 300,000 plus members of professionals, specialists, educators, and nonprofit leaders. They're in the business of language policy to raise awareness of the benefits of multilingualism to Congress, and they speak language policy to power. Another effort, even in our own community, is the Seal of Biliteracy, which is an award earned by high school students that recognizes these learners' high levels of proficiency in listening, speaking, reading, and writing in English, the dominant language of our society, as well as in one or more other languages. This program started in California in 2011 and is now offered in 28 states and DC. In its first year, the Seal of Biliteracy was earned by 1,200 high school graduates in Maryland, of which approximately 1,100 were from the Montgomery County public school system. So we see that Montgomery County dominates with the biliteracy seal in the state of Maryland. And here to the right, you'll see a little bit about dual language programs, and their basic tenets are bilingualism, biliteracy, global awareness, and cognitive gains. And the linguistic research has documented that students who graduate through dual language programs perform as well or even better than their monolingual counterparts in standardized testing, all sorts of English language literacy courses, and surpass even levels of IQ and language and cognitive ability in college and in professional life and beyond, well into adulthood. Some demographics are really important in our discussion this morning, related to the Spanish language, specifically in the United States. Let us now explore further details about the social makeup of Spanish speakers in the US and our local region. According to the 2010 US Census, so-called Hispanics, contested term, are now the largest minority group in 191 of the total 366 metropolitan areas in the US. It is projected that this community, so-called Hispanics, which is, as I said, a contested term, will reach 132.8 million by July the 1st, 2050. So that is projected to be the peak of that population in the US. It is projected by demographers that that will then reduce in number due to other factors, perhaps. So nationally, about 2/3 of so-called Hispanics in the United States speak Spanish to some degree. Spanish as a minority language in the US manifests itself in the fields of education, medicine, certainly business, municipal communications, political engagement, and in the case of Montgomery County and Prince George's counties, bilingual signage in parks and public spaces and COVID-related messaging serves as a way to dismantle issues of access. Spanish is the 4th most used language on the internet and boasts over 600 million speakers worldwide, of which about 495 million are native speakers. So the remaining speakers are language learners, so second language learners, foreign language learners of the language across the world, in the United States, Africa, all the continents of Asia and Europe specifically. And so here we see, for example, a picture of the Prince George's County initiative. As we can see this image on the bottom left-hand corner, Prince George's County calls garbage triste, or sad, in an effort to promote responsible waste management. This messaging can be seen in billboards throughout the county. This type of institutionalized signage, as well as other permanent signage, convey a strong message that Spanish as a language is a component of our daily life. In our own community, about 26.1% at Montgomery College of our students identify as Hispanic or Latinx. We see the obvious presence of this community within various initiatives and practices of the college, where numerous services, documents, web pages, and our very own MCTV through Generación Latina are produced in Spanish.
Hey, Eddie, can you explain why the term is like so controversial? Because I get into these discussions all the time.
That's a great question, Professor Rosado. I very much appreciate the question. So Hispanic was often a term used from the US Census, and so it's an institutionalized term from the US government to encapsulate a community that hails from Spanish-speaking nations or Spanish-speaking cultures. And Latinx is a term that has often been introduced more recently to honor different gender expressions and different forms of sexual identity and sexual orientation among people from Latin America, which are communities or cultures or nations that descend from colonial apparatuses who in turn have languages that descended from Latin, right? So Latin America. And so that's contested because there are so many identities in that environment, right, in North and South America that encapsulate Hispanic or Latinx or Latino, Latina, that it's very difficult to honor every single identity. We also know that there are numerous indigenous populations in the region that may not wholly or solely identify with the term, because those terms are connected to colonialism and oppression. And so that's a quick answer to your question, Professor Rosado. Thank you very much. Great. So we see here that this billboard is certainly, hopefully maybe you have seen that in Prince George's County, or I don't know if Montgomery County is doing that, is promoting that among its citizens. And so here, the role of Spanish in social media and in the media, we have some information here regarding that. Such television networks as Univision and Telemundo have dominated the Spanish language airwaves in the US for decades. Both entities cover all major elements and events of US American society and life in Spanish, such as political, presidential debates, presidential inaugurals, sports events, including popular culture. There is an entire infrastructure and deeply rooted cultural capital being created solely in Spanish within the borders of the United States. I'm certain that many of you have noticed the various Spanish language signage in such stores as Target or Lowe's or Walmart or McDonald's in our region or in other large metropolitan areas of the United States. Perhaps this has become so commonplace that you may no longer notice its importance or its value, right, in our culture. And furthermore, the pandemic has ushered in more linguistic equity and inclusion, right? So we see here some of these pictures. The Congressman Grace Meng from New York introduced recently a legislation piece that would require federal government agencies to translate into multiple languages all written COVID-19 related materials, including resources on coronavirus vaccines that are produced for the public. And so those of us who have been privileged enough to have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine recently received a COVID vaccine record card. If we look closely to our right, top right, this card has been printed in both English and Spanish, and this is disseminated nationally, right? And if we also notice that English has been printed in larger font, conveying a clear message that English is still the dominant language of the United States. Our founding fathers and our founding documents were initially produced in English. Conversely, the Declaration of Independence was also translated into German in the 18th century due to the importance of the large population of German speakers in the colonies, particularly in Pennsylvania. We also see to the right here, the bottom right, that the Department of Health and Human Services in Spanish, the term itself is translated into Spanish. So when we see these types of translations, we notice there's an institutionalization of the use of Spanish. And so Dad put on his shield to protect us against the COVID-19 virus. And so learn more about the vaccines and what you can do to stop the spread of the coronavirus. And so there's an entire website here dedicated in Spanish to message. Maybe you've gone to Target and seen this stop sign here that tells you to practice social distancing and perhaps wear your mask. That too has been produced in 2 languages in Target. Great. So I also would like to talk a little bit about some information related to MC, right? So at Montgomery College, we produce our website material, not just in Spanish, but in other languages such as Amharic, which is a widely used language among our students, French and Vietnamese, among other languages. Montgomery County has their 311 services in Spanish also. And the White House has recently reintroduced a Spanish language website. So we see at the national level, the Spanish language is quite present. Certainly that changes from depending on the political ideologies of an administration. And so here at the bottom, you can put in your email address and get information in Spanish about the White House. And those of you who speak the language or want to learn more about the language, I invite you to perhaps do that. Some suggested reading here. I'd like to invite you here to look at the top left-hand corner. In the slide, I recommend specifically the book of Rosina Lozano. her book in American language, The History of Spanish in the United States. This is a book that the Montgomery College Library adopted. It's also available through an electronic version, where the Princeton historian posits that the Spanish language can be conceptualized as part of the US American story. And I'd also like to invite any heritage speakers of Spanish who may wish to enroll in Spanish for Heritage Speakers, Spanish 106 in fall 2021. Please keep your eye out for this course in the fall schedule of classes that's going to be published very soon. And as I close today, this morning, I would like to mention that there is not just one type of Spanish in the United States, not just one US version of the language, but rather several language varieties and dialects that are both rooted in the colonial period, as well as related to the various accents of different Spanish-speaking immigrants throughout history. Code switching is commonplace among Spanish speakers, meaning there's a mixture between two languages and there's a hybrid communication style that is often very characteristic of US Spanish speakers, which demonstrates, I would argue, a sophisticated cognitive ability to use these two languages in a very interesting way. For me, as a speaker of several languages, including Spanish, I assert and I claim for myself this language's due place and belonging to the US American cultural narrative. And as a bridge builder to our featured guest speaker this morning, and honoring Women's History Month, I'd like to draw your attention to an unsung heroine of language rights in the United States, Jovita Idar, a journalist, activist, and teacher. In the last 2 minutes remaining, here is her story.
She saw no conflict between being a journalist and an educator and a feminist. She was always on the front lines of change. Say I don't act right. It's only like how I wanna live my life. 1914, Laredo, Texas. 29-year-old journalist Jovita Idar worked for the Spanish language newspaper El Progreso when it published an editorial criticizing US military intervention in the Mexican Revolution. And for that, the Texas governor ordered the Texas Rangers to destroy El Progreso. They were a police force meant to protect the Anglo-Texan economic and political elites, who would shoot first and ask questions later. When they arrived, they found Jovita Idar standing proudly there, and she was not about to let them infringe upon their First Amendment rights as a free press.
The Rangers said, "Please step aside." And I said, "No, I'm standing here, and you cannot come in because it's against the law."
A Mexican-American, Spanish-speaking, bilingual brown woman stood up to the Texas Rangers at a time when they were committing terrible crimes against people of color, and specifically ethnic Mexicans.
Idar stood her ground, and the Rangers left. But as her brother, Aquilino, later described, they returned early the next morning.
Had hammers and sledgehammers, and they broke the press. They wrecked everything.
All right, so that was a general introduction and a little bit of context for our guest speaker today. And now, without further ado, I pass along the torch to Carolina Galeano of MCTV. Carolina, adelante.
Gracias. Dear MC community, it is my distinguished pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Moises Linares. You may have seen his highly enthusiastic reports as bilingual sports anchor for NBC4 in English, as well as for Telemundo 44 in Spanish. He hails from LA, California, and El Salvador. Mr. Linares began his career at California State University, Northridge, earning a Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Journalism and Central American Studies. Subsequent to his successful university studies, Mr. Linares served in numerous noteworthy capacities as World Cup 2006 online reporter, production assistant writer for Fox Sports, sports columnist for MSN Fox Sports, writer blogger for WordPress.com, community facilitator for J. Nolan Community Service, freelance reporter, writer, editor for Don't Quit, Get Fit, play-by-play announcer for DC United, CBS Radio, El Sol 107.9, and sports anchor and report for Telemundo DC. We warmly welcome Moises Linares to our eclectic MC community as he shares his inspiring story with us. We are incredibly grateful for his time and dedication this morning. Adelante, Moises.
Thank you. That's an amazing introduction, actually. I was not expecting that. You did your research. You did your research. I've been blessed to be on this journey for over a decade now, and I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be a part of this great project. Professor Eddie reached out, and I was actually shocked and flattered because I've been doing this for the past 5-6 years, which is make that transition, right? Make that crossover from just Spanish TV to bilingual sports anchor. And it's something that I take pride in because at the beginning, you know, coming from a Central American background, being born in Los Angeles, but my family coming from El Salvador during the 80s, there was always this notion of how far can you go, or you have a limit based on where you're from. And for the past 3 to 4 years, I've worked really hard in making it a priority to become a bilingual sports anchor, not just the crossover, right? I didn't just want to cross over and say, hey, I'm leaving Spanish TV and I'm going to NBC and I'm going to stay at NBC. From the moment that we were hired by NBC, I made it clear my goal is to be a bilingual sports anchor, and I want to be among the top anchors in the country. And it's a thing, even though sometimes we don't notice it. For the past 20 years, we've seen great journalists, men and women, you know, pick up the flag and say, hey, I represent two cultures. And I feel that now is like that time for me where, you know, I have that opportunity to represent my family's culture. I have the opportunity to represent my American culture and blend them in, you know, coming from South Central Los Angeles. I've always said I'm very proud of where I come from. I'm very proud of saying I'm from LA and representing that community the same way that now I represent the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia community. So I know there's a lot of kids behind me, a lot of kids who might be on this Zoom call who are saying, you know, I want to do it. So I prepared a PowerPoint, so bear with me because this is the first time ever. You know, I've done a lot of speaking engagements, but this is the first time I said, you know what? I need a PowerPoint presentation. I just can't show my face. I know it's pretty and all, but I need to be prepared, especially when Professor Eddie and Nestor, our community facilitator or director, when we met, and I saw how prepared Professor Eddie, I was like, nah, I can't. Nah, he's gonna make me look bad. This guy's he's gonna have a whole class before I come in to speak. So let me share my screen. Let me see, Professor Eddie, if you can help me with this, make sure. Can you guys hear a little music? Yeah. This is how you know you're from LA. You have, you know, the palm trees. You have the little, you know, Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, and it's pretty much, that tells you, he's from LA. So very proud. And I want to show you a little bit of what I've done in the past couple of years. This is not the most recent, but you know, it's good enough for you to see a little of my work.
2018 didn't end the way Redskins fans were hoping. Another year finishing on a sour note with 6 head coaches being shown the door.
You want to talk about passion? I'm with the real fans right here. Barra Brava, District Ultras. They've been waiting for over 20 years for this moment. A playoff game in a stadium they can call their own. How does that feel?
Buenas noches, les habla Moisés Linares. Bienvenidos a Hoy en Rusia. Qué partido dramático entre la selección de Argentina y Nigeria. Fue un tal Marco Rojo el que le dio el pase, el boleto al albiceleste con este golazo.
He's a unified world champion in the 154 pounds, but not so long ago, Jared had a different type of job in his local community.
After 26 years, the wait is over. Washington, D.C. has its first champion in one of the 4 major sports. And as you can see behind me, thousands of fans woke up early to be a part of this history. Y bueno, si es fanático del béisbol, fanático del deporte, fanático de la comida, bueno, vengas al Parque de los Nacionales porque este fin de semana tenemos a taste of the world, una probadita del mundo.
I'm still here in West Palm Beach enjoying this beautiful weather. And while being down here in Florida, we caught up with starting pitcher Gio Gonzalez.
Doors have opened and fans are starting to come in. It has to be a different game compared to the one we saw last Monday. As far as distractions, when in Vegas, head coach said, forget about that. Big football game here in Landover, Maryland, FedEx Field. Good atmosphere. As you can see, we have the Salvadoran fans on that side, pretty excited. We also have the Brazilian fans who are going to be in for a treat tonight because they get to watch one of the biggest stars in the world of soccer. We're talking about Neymar. How does it feel to get to watch Neymar here in your hometown?
It means staying in first place in the division just got a lot harder. This afternoon, head coach Jay Gruden confirmed the news. 3 starters on offense out for the rest of the season.
So let me go over what you just saw. It's been a journey. It didn't just happen overnight, right? I started in Spanish TV. It wasn't my first choice coming out of college. It was something that I took what was given to me, and I made the best out of that opportunity. Why did that happen that way? Because I'm bilingual. So I had the ability to go in 2 different directions. And if for me, it was like, whoever gives me the opportunity, I'm going to take it. I'm going to go. I'm going to run with that. So Spanish TV said, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity. And I said, all right, here we go. So I started polishing my skills. I started, working on my Spanish because as a Spanish speaker, as a native Spanish speaker, you speak the Spanish you're taught at home. You speak the Spanish that your family, it doesn't mean that it's the correct Spanish. It doesn't mean that that's the professional Spanish, the one that's going to get you that first job. So that was a little bit of what I've done. And I feel like that's a couple years ago, and I still have a lot to work on. I still have a lot of improvements to do. But how did I get here? That's one of the main questions I get when I go around and I speak. How did you get here? You're from LA. How did you end up in Washington, D.C., in the DMV, right? So here's a few pointers. It was all a dream, like my boy B.I.G. says. When I first got here, I was just dreaming. Like many of you, I had a dream of making something out of myself, of changing my family's story, of changing what people think I should be, where we come from. My parents came from a civil war, trying to survive. And for me, that carries a lot of weight. It means a lot to represent my family in that way and say, I am the first generation. I am a first generation Salvadoran American who's here in the US, and my family left it all. My mom crossed 3 countries. That's 3,000 miles on foot, on train, trying to get to LA just for me to have an opportunity. If she was ever gonna have a family, if she was ever gonna have a kid, it was in her mind. I want to give them the best opportunity possible. She didn't know how, she didn't know what she was gonna do. What she knew is she had to get to the United States, and she did it by walking thousands of miles. She did it by climbing on trains, by asking for rides, for asking people, can I sleep in your barn? Can I stay here for 2 nights? Then, waiting at the border for coyotes to say, all right, it's time to go. It's time to walk. So all of that means a lot to me. So I became the first person to graduate from high school as the eldest of 7. I became the first person to graduate from a 4-year school. And I began a career in sports in 2008. But something a lot of people don't know about me is the fact that as a first generation college student, I had no idea what college was about, how to get to college. So what did I do? I went to a junior college. I went to Rio Hondo Community College. I graduated with an AA from Rio Hondo, and that opened the doors to a whole different world. Then I transferred to California State University, Northridge, ended up with 2 degrees, and here we are now. So when they asked me to be a part of this conversation and what is it to be bilingual? And I was like, what is it to be bilingual? I haven't really thought about it. So I said, let me create my own acronym about what bilingual is to me. The tools that have helped me become a bilingual journalist. And the first one is to believe, believe in yourself, believe in the stuff you're doing, having integrity while working, You know, anything you do in life, you need to have that integrity to find success. You need to love your job. You need to love your career. You need to love your dreams. If you love all of that, you will find a way to get to that next door. And you have to inspire others, because at the end of the day, it's not all about us. You know, the stuff that we do inspires the next generation. You have to be non-negative. When you do anything, it doesn't have to be your career. It could be your school. It could be your next goal. You have to have a non-negative approach to be successful at that. And here's one of my favorite words. If you don't know it, you should write it down, because anything you do in life, you need grit. That strength of character, that's what gets you to that next step. For me, I feel like grit has been the one thing that has gotten me as far in my career. Just knowing that every single time that I've fallen, every single time somebody's told me no, grit has picked me up. And it's what makes me strong, that inner strength. You know, unafraid of making mistakes, unafraid of what people might say or think, you know, and being authentic. I am who I am. The person you meet in real life is the person you see on TV. And it took me a while to find that out, to kind of figure that out about myself. But once I did, the world changed. I became a different person. Authenticity is very important, and longevity. Why? Because this is not a sprint. This is not a 100-meter race. This is a marathon. You start in college. If you're in college right now, you're taking the first steps to changing your life, to making something out of yourself, to making the best out of the opportunity you have. Just to recap what I just said, what does it mean? Believe in yourself, integrity, performing your job, love what you do in order to be successful, inspire others to be great with your hard work, non-negative mindset approach. Grit is necessary to overcome adversity, unafraid to make mistakes along the way. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get 100% every single time, because in those mistakes, there's going to be a lot of lessons. There's going to be a lot of moments that are going to teach you things you need to learn for you to keep moving on in life. Authenticity will catapult you to success. Longevity, like I said, this is not a marathon. I'm sorry, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a long race. And when I think about marathon and what that means, and I see it a lot in our society nowadays, is the fact that a lot of people want to say, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to be a part of this marathon. I'm going to run the 20-something miles. And if you've ever ran a long race, you know that marathons are difficult. But most people just want to put the number. Most people just want to put the number on their chest and say, I'm going to run a marathon. Let me take the picture. Let me snap it. Look what I'm doing. Marathon, it's a mental game, right? It's not just your legs. Just like in life, just like in anything you do, you have to put in the work. You have to be ready to get up every single time you fall. So these are some of the keys that have helped me. Now I want to show you what I'm doing now. You know, when I first started my career, I had a dream that I was going to be a play-by-play announcer. And everywhere I went, people told me, nah, you don't got it. Nah, man, nah, that's not going to happen for you. I'm sorry. Like, you don't have the voice. You have the will, but you don't have the talent that we want. And, you know, that hurt me. You know, it was demoralizing to hear people in the professional ranks tell me that, people who I looked up to, people who I admired. And then I started figuring out that the only thing that mattered was what I thought, not what people thought about me. So I kept going, I kept grinding, I kept working at it. And then, you know, eventually I started running into small opportunities where I was working for free. I was doing things for free. I was offering my jobs to whoever would take them. And I started knocking on doors until they started opening up. And I've been blessed to say that, you know, now, you know, I've been the voice of DC United. I've been the voice of the Washington football team. And here's a piece from last season that went viral. And I was like, I've been doing this for the past 3 years. Like, no, you guys didn't notice? Like, I've been here, like, I've been doing this. And sometimes it's not about, you know, people noticing what you're doing. It's about the consistency, and people are going to catch up to you. If you're consistent, eventually you're going to have your moment. And when this went viral, I'm like, wait, have you seen the other clips that I've done? But it's cool. I'm like, here we go. Like now you know my name. Now you know where I'm from. Now you know what I do.
Quiere meter a Washington a este partido nuevamente. Viene Heinicke, presionado Heinicke, lo van a capturar, se escapa Heinicke, sigue de pie, puede lanzar, utiliza las piernas. Viene Heinicke, se lanza. ¡Está dentro! ¡Touchdown! Washington lo hizo el 4, Heinicke utilizó las piernas, corrió a toda velocidad, se lanza como un clavado en una piscina.
So that's a touchdown call from the Washington football team. Como dice mi mamá. Great job, right? So I've learned to, pat myself on the back and say, all right, that was great. What else do we have? Let's keep moving. Let's keep going. So keys to being a successful bilingual speaker. Very important. So take some notes. Read and write in both languages as much as possible. You want to be good at something, you have to work at it every single day. It doesn't just happen overnight. Just because you know how to write something or read something doesn't mean you can do it at the professional level. You have to harness those goals. You have to hone those skills every single day. And when I first got to Telemundo, I can tell you that I was still a little bit raw. And they were like, where are you from? Like, you were born, where were you born? And I said, I have to work at this because I didn't come, you don't come at the A+ level. You come at the C+ when you start. And then you figure out that you're not the person you thought you were. I'm like, no. In my mind, I'm like, I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? But then when you see yourself, you're really like at the, hola, ¿cómo están? And like, whoa, that's how I look in camera. That's how I sound in camera. And you just keep working. You keep honing those skills and you get better every single day. Practice with your friends, with your family members. And why do I say practice with your family and friends? You're not going to show up to your first interview. You're not going to show up to your big presentation without being prepared for the moment. So if you show up and you think you have it, you might, hit yourself on the face, and it doesn't work like that. If you work with your friends and family who you have, who you feel safe around, it is a big opportunity for you to improve those skills without you might get a little backlash because our family members and friends tend to do that a lot, but it's the perfect people or the perfect group of people to improve your skills. And if you need that work, challenge yourself with words you don't understand. It's very important. Sometimes we see things we've never seen before. I've never ran into that word. I don't understand that word. What is that word? So look it up. You have all the tools you need, but you have to be willing to put in that work. Nowadays, you don't even need a dictionary. All you have to do is Google it. Take your phone out, Google the word, Google whatever you're reading that you don't understand, and say, oh, okay, that's how it goes. And if you like the word, because sometimes like, oh, that's an interesting word, I'm going to use it. So you practice it. You put it into a list of words you want to keep using, and that's how you get better. Be consistent. Just because you speak 2 languages doesn't mean you're fluent. So that is a very, very strong, point right there. You have to be consistent. Consistency is key in being bilingual. A lot of people say, oh, I took Spanish in high school, but I forgot it. Yeah, you forgot it because you don't put it to work. You have to put it to work. People go to the gym. I used to go to the gym and I used to be super fit. What happened? Well, I stopped going. Like, well, yeah, what do you expect? Your muscles are going to forget. You have to work those muscles. You have muscles in your body. You have muscles right here. These are just as important when we're talking about being bilingual. Don't worry about other people's opinions of you. Key. What other people say about you doesn't matter. So you work on you, you focus on you, and you move on. So this is a slide of who I was, who I am, and who I am becoming, which means learn from the past experiences. Don't dwell on past mistakes because no one's perfect, but what happened in the past is in the past. Live in the present. Make the best out of each opportunity. Visualize the finish line every now and then. I'm very big on visualizing stuff. I visualized this presentation. before Professor Eddie even reached out. I had visualized this moment. I said, I'm going to start speaking to colleges. This is where I see my future. This is what I want to do with my career. I want to make the best opportunity that I have. I want to make the best out of this opportunity. So I said, I see myself speaking. And I told my mom one day, Mom, like I had this vision where, I see myself talking in front of a lot of people. I see one of my best friends, Yadira, is in here too. And my sisters are in here too watching. So I love you guys. And, I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. So I visualized it, but I don't stay stuck in that future moment. I have events that are coming up and I see them every now and then. I kind of just with my peripherals, I'm looking like, there it is. And then I come back to the present, work, because that's what gets you to that next level. As a bilingual speaker, this is what's going to get you to that next level. So work on your future by living in the present. Now, this is something I don't show to a lot of people, but I'm going to show you guys. My first ever on-air report. It's a long story behind it, but I want to listen to the voice. And I wouldn't show it to them. I'm like, man, this is terrible. People can see this. But now I'm proud of it. I'm just like, this is how it started. This is how that dream began.
Chivas USA cuenta con una nueva promesa latina de origen salvadoreño. Gerson Mayén nació en la ciudad de Los Ángeles después que su familia huyó de la guerra en El Salvador durante los años 80.
Sé que mis padres sufrieron hace 30 años y la verdad, gracias a Dios que se convirtieron a cristianos.
Con su religión, el apoyo y amor de su familia, Mayén ha logrado apartarse de los malos caminos de la calle.
Crecí alrededor de mucho pandillero y la verdad es difícil, pero cuando uno tiene a Dios, las cosas son más calmadas porque uno tiene a Dios en su corazón y pienso que eso cambia la vida de uno.
Su padre fue el primero en pronosticar un buen futuro para Gerson en el deporte a su temprana edad.
Desde los 5 años yo le vi que tenía buenas virtudes, buenas cualidades con el balón. Desde los 5 años desde que tenía esa edad, dije, este muchacho puede llegar a jugar.
Desde niño, Mayén se destacó en las ligas locales. También pasó por una de las mejores academias de fútbol en el país y casi terminó jugando para Colo-Colo de Chile.
Yo quería ir porque me dijeron de 17 años iba a debutar.
En 7 partidos, la presente temporada y sus...
Aquí quiero ser titular más que todo y después de aquí a ver, quiero ir a Europa, pero si no se puede, pues estar aquí igual y tratar de echarle ganas para salir de Estados Unidos.
Es en parques como este donde el sueño de miles de niños en convertirse en jugadores profesionales comienza. Ahora Gerson Mayén está teniendo la oportunidad de hacer esos sueños en una realidad. En las calles de Los Ángeles, Moisés Linares, para Fox Sports en español.
Come on now. Like the first thing I tell myself is like, bro, who gave you that suit? That suit is bigger than me. It's like gigantic, but it was my first report and I was gonna make it happen no matter what. They didn't tell me, Moises, you have this assignment. I went and I did it myself. I was working for Fox. I put it together myself. I edited the report. I wrote the report. There's a lot of mistakes in it. But I said, I'm gonna make this happen one way or another. And how did it air? Well, I tricked my producers into thinking that the vice president of the channel had said that it was okay. And I said, hey, the vice president of the channel says that you should air this report. I had it prepared and they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, he left already. So he's like, oh, okay, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. So they put the report on. It looks good. The first images are pretty solid. And when it's over, they, at the end, they see me and they're like, oh my goodness. So they were like, that was risky, but congratulations, blah, blah, blah. And that's how my first report aired on national television, by the way. So just a little nugget right there. Success. When preparation meets opportunity, be prepared for the moment. Work when no one is watching. Key. Social media era has I don't know how to put this. It's kind of messed with our heads where we need to show people every single thing we're doing. Look, I'm studying. Look, I'm on my computer. look at me. It's all about me, 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 me. Your real work is done when nobody's watching, when nobody sees you, when you're in the shadows. That's when you work. That's when you're supposed to put in that real work, when nobody is telling you, oh, great job, that's awesome, keep it up. Look for ways to improve every single day. You have to rest, so don't take it, literally when I say every single day, but every opportunity you get, work, work, work. How do I improve? What do I want to do? Do I want this degree? Then I need to study. Do I want to move on to a 4-year university? Then I need to work my butt to get to that next level. But it's all work. No one's going to hand you anything. If you're beginning at the junior college level, that's okay. I did too. I went to school for 2 years at a junior college. And because of that experience, I came out a better student. I came better prepared to take on what a 4-year degree would be. Take calculated risk. Sometimes you have to take risks in order to move on. And most importantly, outwork the competition. If you're in an area where you are competing with other people, right? At the end of the day, you're competing with yourself. But one of the things that I can say has been my biggest asset is the fact that mentally, I always say nobody's gonna outwork me. I'm gonna outwork my entire department. I'm gonna show them what work, not because I'm in a direct competition, but just let the work speak for itself. So if you have a test, right, the work is gonna reflect on your scores, on your final test scores. So that's one of the ways you move on and you keep improving, and you apply all of these things to being bilingual, and you do it in 2 different languages, and then you become a double-edged sword, because that's what you are. And if you haven't noticed, if you're bilingual, like Professor said, you are in a special group. It's a special category. If you're trilingual, you're even better, but being bilingual is the norm. It will become the norm. And if you have those skills right now, what you need to do is keep polishing those skills, keep working on becoming better, keep working on improving, take advantage of every single opportunity you have before you at school, in your community, and in your job. The end. Questions? Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for thinking about me to be a part of this great initiative.
Yes, Moises, thank you very much for your inspiring talk today. And I do appreciate, on behalf of all our MC community, our students in Spanish 106, and everybody who's sending you heart emojis and plus and up hand signs there. Thank you so very much for your words and your authenticity and the grit that you had just related here to us. Certainly we are inspired by your experiences and your successes. Departing from a community college beginning. So certainly that is well taken here at MC. I wanted to start off our question and answer session, but before that, we will hand it off over in a minute to Professor Rosado. I had a quick question for you. There are a lot of questions in the chat, but my first question is, as a bilingual sports anchor, who holds you accountable for correct standard use of Spanish at Telemundo 44?
We have a news director, and a lot of stuff goes through the news director. A lot of things go through our executive producer. In our case, in my case, that would be Edith Lozada and Jeanette Luviano. So I speak to them, and I usually don't do things. When it comes to my segment, I do have like liberty to make mistakes, and they do happen. But I try to double or triple check my work as much as I can. I'm rushing on instances, which makes things a little bit more complicated. But when it comes to TV reports, anything that I do goes through them. And I want it to go through them because I have to hold myself accountable. So it's a good filter to have before you put it out on TV. It's very important for you to make sure you have it right. And sometimes you might have it wrong and you come out with a lesson. That's what I said. Mistakes are fine. You know, like don't get it wrong. Like there's no perfect TV personality in the world. There's some that know how to do it better than others. And we call that, they know how to put makeup on the mistakes, right? They make a mistake and instantly you forget about it because they're so good at moving on that you didn't even catch it. But if you pay attention and if you're focusing only on mistakes, you'll catch a lot of the anchors, reporters, because we're human. you're not expected to be perfect, but your goal is to be as good as possible. And that you get that with a lot of repetitions, with a lot of work, with a lot of practice, with a lot of preparation. But on instances, they might throw you into the fire with something you know very little of. We call that breaking news. Hey, we have a shooting and blah, blah, blah. Here's the notes we have in the last 2 minutes. Here you go. And you're like, oh, the anchor might be like, well, this is coming in from, Montgomery College. We have, something, I'm not even going to go into that, but something occurred and, blah, blah, blah. These are the details. And they're reading, we call that, freestyle reading on the spot. They didn't even have time to look at it. They're just reacting to the words that are in the teleprompter or the notes somebody handed them. So
thank you very much, Moises, for that context. Certainly that gives us some insight into the different underpinnings and behind the scenes processes of quality control for language. And certainly as a linguist myself, I was very much interested in hearing that accountability piece of how the standardized use of Spanish and English, for that matter, as a bilingual anchor, how that is quality controlled. And I'm very much interested in hearing that. So I'll pass it along to Professor Rosado, who is going to coordinate our Q&A section. Moises, we have ample questions that have already been typed into the chat. Professor Rosado, please go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Eddie. Thank you so much, Moises. The chat has so many messages of appreciation for your inspiring story. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so the first question, what was your biggest obstacle? How did you overcome it? And did you ever feel like just giving up?
Getting a first job was my biggest obstacle. It took me years. And I did feel like quitting many times. I felt like this is not going to happen for me. I thought that I was knocking on a lot of doors. If you've heard my story before, people know that I applied to over 100 jobs before somebody actually told me yes. And I was at the point where I was thinking, all right, it's time to change careers. I've tried it all. It's not working. And God works in mysterious ways. And I feel that, the time was perfect. And it came at the right time when, things in my family were falling into place. But it did take years. And within those years, I was preparing myself. So it's not like I stood still and like, oh, I hope somebody hires me. I went through a process where it was no answer. Sorry, you don't have the experience we're looking for. Sorry, you don't fit the profile we want. And then on instances, through the people who worked at different stations, they're like, dude, you're not exactly what they want. They want something else. So I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep applying. Somebody's going to give me a job. And then a buddy of mine said, hey, man, all you need is one door. And that just stuck in my head. And I'm like, all I need is one door. I'm going to look for that door. I'm going to break these walls down. I'm going to change, the narrative in my family, in my community of South Central only being a place where kids who become athletes are able to get out. Unless you're a genius, you're not going to be able to get out. And if you look at the numbers, the number of kids who become athletes it's a very small percentage, close to none. The number of geniuses that we actually know about, maybe there is many more, but they don't have the resources to really develop those skills to move on, are even, it's a small number. And then I was like, all right, my grit is going to get me to the next level. And I got up and I went through many experiences that were just, I could tell you that those experiences could have broken people down and said, yeah, this is not for me. It's not in the cards. So I knew that I just needed one shot. And when I had that opportunity, I was going to make the best out of that opportunity. And I saw somebody in the chat say 100. Yeah, 100, maybe even more. Every single day I got up and I went to have coffee and I would apply to 5 to 10 jobs a day. And I would follow up with phone calls and I would send my stuff. And then one day somebody said, hey, man, you're hungry. And I said, yeah. I just need one shot. And they gave me an audition. And this is crazy. They gave me an audition in El Paso, Texas. And I went to audition, not knowing that I was going to audition. I thought I had the job. And I choked the audition like this. I wanted the ground to swallow me. But then I got up and I said, it's not the end. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get up. And then I came to Telemundo. And I looked around and I said, everybody here's Salvadoran. I've never seen that before. That's where my family's from. And I said, I'm in the perfect place. And I know Professor Eddie, before I'm going to answer this question because I know he mentioned it before. People ask me, before I got to NBC, we had Erica Gonzalez was there. So I always tell Erica, you broke the dawn. You broke You broke down the door for many of us, right? But you're from the Mexican culture, right? She represents the Mexican culture. I represent the Salvadoran culture. And for me, that means a lot because the majority of the biggest population here in the DMV is Salvadoran. And around the country, sometimes the Central American community has been looked down upon. Like they think we're only good enough to clean houses, to do construction, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I respect my people. I look up to them. I admire them. They're courageous. They're strong. You know, they have grit too. That's where we get the grit from. But I said it's time for the professionals who are now first generation, second generations to step up. And it's my responsibility having the platform that I have to say, it's our time. It's our moment. Now we show them what we're here for, why we came to this country, why our parents left their country. Nobody wants to leave their country. So it's our moment to show the world why we're here, why we came to work, and now why we have doctors, lawyers, TV personalities, professors. And it's time to highlight, you know, those people with events like this one.
Certainly, Moises, I want to interject here as a professor, a Spanish speaker in the United States. We inculcate this very value in our Spanish for Heritage Speakers 106 course, namely that in order for the Spanish language to have a sustainable future in the United States for years and generations to come, it needs to infuse itself into professional realms, right? So where decisions are made, so in the boardroom, in the skyscrapers of cities, in impactful organizations, if bilinguals have a seat at the table, they can bring about change and make their voices heard. Only in that way can the Spanish language, many argue, have a strong and sustainable future in the business and professional realm. So I wanted to insert that as a tagline to what you just talked about, Moises. Professor Rosado, I know we have more questions.
We do. Okay, so another question is, what was your biggest inspiration for doing what you do? And did you always know that you wanted to be a television anchor, or is that something that you came to later in life?
My biggest inspiration has always been and will continue to be my mother. And I know that athletes say that all the time, and people who come from places like the place that I come from say that a lot. But my mom's my biggest obstacle. She is such a strong woman. You know, she sacrificed so much for me. She's given me the opportunity. She had no idea what college was, and neither did I until I got to the 10th grade. I had no idea what going to college was. And she said one day, I told her, Mom, I don't think I'm going to go to college. And she said, why not? And she didn't know what it was. She just knew it's like, you're going to keep going to school. And I said, because I don't have a car. Like, how am I going to go to a 4-year school that's like an hour away? Like, I can't live there. We can't afford dorms. So I went to a junior college, and then I'm thinking maybe I'm just good with a AA degree, and I wanted to continue my education, but you know, the odds were against you. Everything was working against you. So she said, you know what? We're moving to the Valley, which was like 40 minutes from where we were, and it was 5 minutes from the school. And she said, we're gonna move. And then she said, are you sure? She's like, yeah, you're gonna go to school. And I said to myself, and she's willing to sacrifice that after everything she's done already, you know, coming to the US, moving my entire family so I can go to college and I can be the first person in my entire family to graduate from a 4-year school. I have to take advantage of this. I have to do it for her. I have to do this for my sisters. I have to do this for my uncles. I have to do it for every single person who sacrificed something for me to have this opportunity, because I have to be the person who now picks up the flag and says, all right, just like they used to do back in the Civil War and the Revolution, when somebody fell at the front, somebody had to be brave enough to pick up the flag and ran with it and say, I'm gonna carry this flag now. And I've been doing that. And along the way, I said, I carry 2 flags. I carry the American flag and I carry the Salvadoran flag. So it is my responsibility to do this job. And it's crazy because that happened 10 years ago. And it's been this long for me to be here in front of you. It's been 10 years plus and within those 10 years, 5 of saying I'm bilingual, I'm bilingual, I'm bilingual. I'm a bilingual anchor. I'm a bilingual sports anchor. And at the beginning, people laughed at me and they said, no, you're not. No, you're not. You know, you have an accent. And that's something that I heard. Yeah, that's something you hear a lot when you cross over. You have an accent. So it used to offend me so much. And I used to get upset. And one day I spoke to one of my buddies who's a producer at ESPN, and he said, next time they tell you that, ask them, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand the message, the information that I'm giving you when I'm speaking? And they were like, yeah. And I said, okay. So I said, yeah, that's true. So I stood my ground and I said, people from Boston have an accent. People from New York City have an accent. People from Texas have an accent. People from the South have an accent, but you don't say anything to them. So for me, it said, now I know where I stand. It's not going to be easy. This path is not easy. And as a person of color, I said, I have to stand up for everybody who's coming after me because they might encounter something similar. So these are some of the obstacles. These are some of the challenges that I face. And I look back and I said, this is for my mom. Every Emmy Award that I've won, and until I retire, I will always say, Mom, this is for you. Mom, we did this because of you. And I mean, I have 11 Emmy Awards now after, being here for 8 years. So it's a blessing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. There's one other question that I think is important for our students, and that's, how do you respond to criticism? Because I know that can be a tough one.
I ignore it. If it's not constructive, it goes into one ear and it comes out through the other. I like for people to tell me where I need to work. Where can I improve? How can I get better? And that's how I respond to criticism. If it's constructive, it's welcome. If it's not constructive, then I don't need to hear it. People are always going to speak. People are always going to have negative comments. I don't worry about what people think about me. As long as my feet are in the ground, as long as I'm working. And my goal now is not just about myself. My goal now is to help others. My goal is, how do I make you better? How can I help you improve? How do I help the next generation get to where they need to get? And sometimes it's just by telling them the truth, being authentic, sharing moments like this one, making myself available for events like this one. It's part of my responsibility, and that's helped me grow as a man. It's helped me grow as a son, as a family member, and as a role model for my community. What people say about me or about you doesn't matter. If it's not gonna add, it's only subtracting. So you need to figure, record it in your head. People's opinions of you do not matter. If they're not gonna help you grow, then it just goes in through one ear and it comes out through the other.
Okay, awesome. So someone was asking, what quality do you think is most important in being successful in a position like this?
Consistency. You need to be consistent. You need to do it over and over and over. Working in TV, you're only as good as your last report. I did my last report. Great, that was amazing. All right, and somebody asked me one day, so what else can you do? And I'm like, whoa, man, I just did an amazing report. Okay, that was yesterday. So what do we got today? So your consistency keeps you where you're at. People who are successful in the TV business as journalists, as professionals, have one thing in common. They're consistent. They don't take breaks like, oh, I did something great today. I'm going to take the next 3 months off. Unless you win like the World Cup or you hit the lotto, that's a different ballgame, right? But in order to be successful at anything, and not just TV, this is life itself, you need to be consistent. You want to be an A+ student? Getting 1A doesn't mean you're an A+ student. You got a 1A, okay, great. You need to do it every single day, every single semester. You have to be consistent throughout your course or throughout your 4-year career in school. Consistency is the biggest key to anything, and within consistency, we can put in, you work on your craft. You look for ways of improving. You surround yourself with people who know a lot more about you than you do. If you're the smartest person in the room, my friend, you're in the wrong room. I would go and I would be like, Professor Eddie, challenge Professor Eddie, challenge Professor Rosado. You don't agree with them? Tell them why, but based it on facts. Why are they wrong? Why do you disagree? Maybe they're not wrong, but it's just two different point of views. Right? You go and you challenge them. Hey, but this and this and this, and that's how you go. In journalism, we do have nowadays, we have two different worlds, which is the opinion-based type of journalism that we're seeing a lot of, opinions, points of views. And then we have the facts. the facts are, you can have a point of view based on facts. This is the reason why I'm saying based on these numbers. Professor Eddie came earlier and said, back when Spanish was founded or when it came to this country, blah, 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 this year. He didn't tell us, oh, well, it came from Ponce, from Puerto Rico. And no, he gave you numbers. He gave you proof. So these are I hope that I answered your question. I got a little bit, carried away and emotional.
We certainly very much appreciate your passion and your grit and your inspiring words, Moises. And so we thank you very much. This concludes the English portion of the call and of the event, of the inaugural event of the Intercultural Learning Series. Those of you who want to stay on for the Spanish language section certainly are welcome to do so. Some of you will need to head out, right? I know, I'm not sure if Professor
One more thing.
Or Professor Malveaux will need to head out, but certainly we appreciate if you want to stay longer.
Professor, one more thing before you leave. Just make sure, if any of you guys have questions, or I know that we couldn't answer every single question, you can follow me on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, Emily Linares DC, Emily Linares DC on Instagram and on Twitter, and it's Moises Linares Deportes on Facebook. So